And so we have reached the climax, the ending, the last big hurrah of the year. 2022 is coming to a close, and I figured that I might as well end the journey I started back in 2021. One involving a loose cannon who had nothing to lose, only to have his whole life flipped upside down with future revelations. We've seen a number of characters' stories end, both in heartbreaking tragedy or delightful triumph, but have only reached past the 2/3 mark of the decrepit detective story. From a mythological figure reborn against the evils of Ragnarok to the dim actualities of compulsion that tear one's life away, Max has seen almost all one canon life. 2 times has he seen the love of his life been brutally murdered in front of him, and twice now has he found himself in a deep conspiracy. And yet, his story hasn't ended. There is still some meat on this bristled man's bones, as no matter where he goes, trouble follows him in big, dark swarms. Second verse same as the first, as Max Payne 2 was a critical darling. It seemed as if Remedy could do no wrong, or at least that was the case on the surface. But the year of 2004 was not a good one for Take-Two, as remember they had acquired the Finnish developer's IP after Max Payne 1 was a hit, as their fiscal expectations were below estimates. Now, I don't want to point the finger at dumb ideas that may have been the cause for this, as acquiring every developer that put out a slightly decent game may have caused the financial irregularities that led to 2004 being a disappointing year for the publisher, as the only money you're earning is put right back into company acquisition. But here comes a GameSpot article to paraphrase Take-Two. The company reforecasted sales due to a number of factors. It cited the shift of Mafia for Xbox and the majority of the European shipments of Mafia for PlayStation 2 from the first fiscal quarter to the second fiscal quarter, unanticipated weakness in the company's North American publishing business during the holiday season and extending into January, and surprisingly, continued disappointing sales of Max Payne 2, The Fall of Max Payne. The statement also made note of having to write off bad debt associated with the recent bankruptcy filing of KB Toys and the cancellation of 2 products in development. On a positive note, the statement mentions the strong showing of its distribution arm, Jack of All Games. To give an idea on who Take-Two had pulled under its slimy tentacle, they had made dealings with Sega for the subsidiary company Visual Concepts, known for the 2K line of sports games like NBA and WWE, alongside purchasing Firaxis Games. You know, the Sid Meier's people. Another GameSpot article goes into heavier detail on the who's and the amounts purchased for, but just having you know that essentially the 2K sports games, any of Sid Meier's 4X games, and BioShock had become property of Take-Two. Free-floating thought time? I wonder how this isn't considered a monopoly. I mean that for games publishing as a whole, as I'm always reminded of how many people want Sony to acquire X brand or Microsoft to purchase Y developer. Newsflash, that would make games development worse than it already is, as creativity would functionally be shot in the face. Yeah, let Sony grab all developers they want. They don't have a terrible track record with baffling decisions and preventing games from coming to platforms. Hint, hint, Devil May Cry 5's odd censorship and Senran Kagura effectively being booted off of Sony's platform. I don't want to live in a world where I can't play busty ninja games, thank you very much. Anyway, Take-Two was guilty of fraud. So they were lying. I'm not incredibly business savvy, as the hard concepts of the stock market and shares fly over my head when it comes to the structuring of a company and how it is traded. This is a field I can barely wrap my head around except for the base ideas. But essentially, as in what I can gather from what I've read about the scenario, Ryan A. Brandt, the chairman of Take-Two at the time of this investigation, circa 2004 through 2005, and a few other executives were backdating stocks of Take-Two. For the briefest explanation, backdating a stock is basically when you buy or are gifted a stock not at its current market price, but at an older, usually cheaper cost, so you can make a profit. For better coverage, here's the New York Times. In one instance, the company awarded 100,000 options to Mr. Brandt in April 2002 when the price was $20 a share, but backdated them to February when the price was $15.25 a share, making a handsome gain likely. The company's financial records were falsified to hide the malfeasance, prosecutors said. This also meant that some shareholders that partook in the grifting were in the firing line as well, them being the other executives I mentioned earlier. So, what was the end result of this? Oh, you know. Take-Two only having to pay out $7.5 million to the SEC for allowing the fraud to take place, a drop in the fucking bucket, seeing as they paid, $32.2 million for Visual Concepts to Sega. Brandt and the other grifters paying a combined total of $6.4 million for their misdeed, with Ryan being barred from any executive position in a company for 5 years, but he still stayed with Take-Two as vice president of production. That's a non-executive role, you see. He only left after a 4-month disability leave due to having old man back. And you wonder why I'm so harsh to publishers. Combine this with the hot coffee controversy and lawsuit dogging GTA San Andreas, Take-Two would be in the midst of a takeover from its investors in the later half of the 2000s. Where was Remedy in the midst of all this nonsense? Literally forming a new deal with Microsoft. Sam Lake and the others had been focusing on Max for at least 7 years at this point. From the early 90s to the late 2000s, their only other game they had to their name was Death Rally, and since the Finnish lads were born out of a cycle of creation and innovation, they wanted to tackle something different. And remember, they didn't own the Max Payne IP, so even if they wanted to create a third game in the series, Remedy would have to go through Rockstar and Take-Two, who called their game a disappointment in the sales department for its second outing. This led to a number of years of shadowy development, keeping people in the dark for their upcoming project. Alan Wake. As A. Wake steps completely out of the Max Payne ballpark, and who knows, I might want to cover this game in the future, I'll leave you with that. In fact, Remedy doesn't factor a whole lot in this story, only showing up near the end of Max Payne 3's development cycle. Taken from Video Gamer's interview with Sam Lake, the writer and physical manifestation of Max, said the following. We were playing the game and giving them feedback, and I had a nice opportunity of working with Dan Houser when he was creating the prequel comic book for Max Payne 3, but other than that, we were not involved. I don't know if that kind of opportunity to return to the series did present itself. I think it would be fun. Moving from publisher of the franchise to the developer, Max Payne was in the hands of Rockstar. Say what I will about the ethical and business side of things when it comes to Take-Two and Rockstar, there is a treasure trove to point out both in this video and some of my other ones. What I can't say is that they were a bad choice. This is post Grand Theft Auto 4 and Red Dead Redemption Rockstar. Two games that defined the late 2000s, early 2010s landscape. In my opinion, the peaks of the cinematic game design philosophy, focusing more on a wider, sweeping narrative with heavy emphasis on cutscenes breaking up sections of gameplay that usually don't last as long. A ratio of 2-to-1, meaning cutscene time outweighs gameplay time, though in regards to 4 and Redemption, this isn't as felt as both are open world games, thus the balance isn't as accurate. Think along the lines of Metal Gear Solid 4. This was the path that many third-person shooters were taking, a path originally trailblazed by Max Payne. Funny thing is, Max Payne 3 was originally announced around 2004, a year after the fall of Max Payne. Off of RockstarWatch.net. Back around 2004, Take-Two's then CEO Jeffrey Lappin confirmed that Max Payne 3 was coming. However, after many years and new Take-Two CEOs, most people lost hope that Max Payne would live to see another game. Other years meant for the game's release were 2009, 2010, 2011, and lastly 2012 when the game actually came out. What happened? In short, Take-Two, their words, was delaying a number of games to ensure quality control. Taken from Business Wire, then chairman and CEO of Take-Two Strauss Zelnick states that, "We do not take changes to our release schedule lightly, and this short delay will ensure that Max Payne 3 delivers the highest quality, groundbreaking entertainment experience that is expected from our company. Max Payne 3 promises to be one of our most exciting releases to date, and we are confident that consumers will once again be amazed by Rockstar's ability to take interactive entertainment to another level. With Max Payne 3 now slated for May, Our robust lineup of upcoming releases for fiscal 2013 is even stronger, including BioShock Infinite, Borderlands 2, Spec Ops: The Line, XCOM Enemy Unknown, and other titles yet to be announced for release that year. If I had to hazard a guess for this sentiment, I would finger Take-Two for playing the long con, ensuring that they had a guaranteed banger year with a multitude of titles that meant they could make a few mistakes between then and now. This was a post-investor takeover and restructured Take-Two due to all the previous shenanigans involving the backdated stock. That's how Strauss rose up to the position of chairman and CEO, so I can only assume that he wanted to cover his butt from the same mob that placed him as the head in the first place. He needed a few feathers in his cap, no matter the cost. Handling the specific development reins for Max Payne 3 was Rockstar Vancouver, formerly known as Barking Dog Studios before their absorption into the Take-Two machine. They're an interesting bunch, as while most of you will know them for Bully, I'll pour one out for those fans as they're equally shafted like the Manhunt crowd. Release an official patch that makes these games runnable on PC, please. They got their start acting as a developer for another developer's game. They created the homeworld expansion Cataclysm, which the honorary Adeptus Mechanicus tech priest has a video on. Talk about coming out of the gate swinging. However, this is where that "at any cost" statement comes back, as I can't cover a Rockstar game without controversy creeping its way into the limelight. While Rockstar creative Dan Houser explains to Gamasutra, that would later be aggregated by VG247, that the reason for why Max Payne 3 was chosen over a Bully sequel was because of limited bandwidth and limited studios and more games to make than we've started, the usual specter of workplace crunch decided to hang around. Mirroring the EA spouse letter accusations of 2004, Rockstar would have its own spouse open letter, accusing the developer of inhospitable workplace conditions beginning around March 2009. From Kotaku, the post claims that since March 2009, San Diego employees have suffered degradation that extends to their quality of life and their family members in the form of mandatory 12-hour days, 6 days a week, have had pay cut and vacation limited. The post alleges that this extended crunch time stress has affected the health of some employees. The wives blame management and a Rockstar thirst for power, urging changes in the working conditions at the San Diego studio. If these working conditions stay unchanged in the upcoming weeks, preparation will be made to take legal action against Rockstar San Diego. While at that point this was only alleged, a few more anonymous people did come out to share their experiences. From Engadget, according to our source, who unsurprisingly asked to be kept anonymous, virtually everything said in the original Rockstar Wives letter and by current and former Rockstar San Diego employees in the comments applies to my experience at Rockstar Vancouver. The source also alleges an August 2010 completion window for the development of the game, though this source isn't optimistic that'll happen. The game's story just went through another total rewrite earlier this month, the third that I'm aware of in the past 2 years, and that means the team would have to have all of the content done by April or May to make the August release date. That would explain all the delays of Max Payne 3, and we do know that Rockstar did engage in crunch culture for Red Dead Redemption 2, meaning who's to say that it wasn't already a practice in place until it was finally exposed. So while the validity of the letter is hard to confirm alongside any of the supporting statements in favor of it, all we have is anonymous employees and wives, the sentiments it argues for do have a basis in truth. Tangent, a lot of people like to bring up the quality of the letter as a means for it being fake instead of looking around the surrounding issues, which is partly odd to me. Like, I know legal writing can be jargon-filled, and I have posted the letter below so you can read it in full. I will admit it is overtly verbose. But seeing as this is a world where the Ultimate Warrior wrote a letter to Vince with repeated usages of the word monies, I think there are other avenues for proving verification. I don't know what background people come from when they do something after all, so who am I to assume? I mean, Dan Houser would elaborate for Redemption 2 that, yes, people did work over 100 hours a week, but those were a voluntary choosing, only for a QA tester to say otherwise. What a messy situation, one that I'm more in favor of the little guy. To get back on topic, as I drifted quite a number of years in Rockstar's future, Vancouver took to heart one of the major ideas that Remedy did back for Max Payne 1's development: direct research gathering. While the previous 2 installments of the Payne franchise saw him shoot up his way all around New York, this latest venture would see him in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Yes, Max was going to Brazil. From Rockstar's official website, gathering assets to help accurately inform and create faithful game-level environments set in Sao Paulo, Rockstar game developers and designers took several trips to the area to extensively document everything from the Glamour exclusivity of posh spots like Avenida Morumbi, Avenida Paulista, and the Ardens district, to harsh high-crime locales like Favela Yapicu and the infamous Edificio Sal Vito. Thousands of pictures were taken for mood and texture. Local fashions and outfits were scanned for reference, and a diverse array of Paulistanos from all walks of life, from bossa nova singers to jiu-jitsu champions to favela gang members, were consulted and interviewed to provide thorough background on the dazzling and dangerous world in which the game is set. This was on top of watching and studying films and other pieces of media from the country, like Tropa de Elite, to the point that some retail copies of Max Payne 3 were bundled with the movie and its sequel, Tropa de Elite 2. Oh, and Amigo Agora e Outro. Both films are well regarded in Brazil, holding numerous ticket sales and gross revenue records, with the duo being nominated and in one case winning an international award. Like with most modern Rockstar games, Max Payne 3 runs on the Rage engine, leading to hilarious outcomes for all but the PlayStation 3 version of the game. The Xbox 360 version came out on 2 discs, while the PC had a whopping 4 just to play it. Flashbacks to Ripper, Fox Hunt, and all those FMV MS-DOS point-and-click games. There is also the Steam release, which runs through the godforsaken Rockstar launcher, but at least doesn't open up its own program like Uplay or Origin. Max Payne 3 basically saw a worldwide release in 2012 for everything but OS X, which got in 2013, with the Steam version being the complete edition with all the multiplayer DLC. As I am definitely allergic to covering multiplayer games on this channel, I won't be looking at the TDM mode for Max Payne 3, but I did use the PC release as my preferred copy, and for once, I don't have to deal with fucking around in the config. Oh, and before I start proper, here's an epilepsy warning as Max Payne 3 does bombard you with flashing and strobing lights. For once, we don't start in media res at the end of the story, but in media res somewhere near the 1/4 mark. This will make sense later, as it usually does, with our tells being Max's state of dress and his hair situation, which is at what looks like a 10% on the Kane Frizzometer. He looks presentable enough. This will change down and up the road. All we know is that he's in Brazil and is still struggling over the deaths of practically everyone in his life. His wife, daughter, Mona, Woden, you name them. Each a ghost haunting Max, leaving him with regret, sadness, and 2 toxic friends. Pain pills and the bottle. Oh yeah, he's in Brazil! For what reason we don't know, but a flash forward to the actual end of the story, this is a Max Payne game after all, so entering in media res at the end of the bloodshed is tradition, says that someone paid for his services and got what they paid for. A dime store angel of death.
So I guess I'd become what they wanted me to be. A killer. Some rent-a-clown with a gun who puts holes in other bad guys. Well, that's what they had paid for, so in the end, that's what they got. Say what you want about Americans, but we understand capitalism. You buy yourself a product and you get what you pay for. And these chumps had paid for some angry gringo without the sensibilities to know right from wrong. Here I was, about to execute this poor bastard like some dime store angel of death. And I realized they were correct. I wouldn't know right from wrong if one of them was helping the poor and the other was banging my sister.
A few weeks ago, Max arrived in Brazil, particularly Sao Paulo, the wealthiest city in the country, a free agent. A bodyguard for the likes of the Branco family, consisting of the eldest brother, real estate mogul Rodrigo, his trophy wife Fabiana, who's 20 years younger and wants none of him, the Kelly to Rodrigo's 10 Mike Knox, middle brother politician Victor Branco, who is up for re-election, and youngest brother partygoer Marcello Bronco. Joining Max on detail is Raul Passos, the two acting as workplace buddies and the only sane men in this crowd of undercover cops, plastic surgeons, and human parasites.
It's my drinks.
Yeah, at least not on duty.
Something like that.
Man, that favela is big.
Yep. Nothing like the view of extreme poverty to make a penthouse cocktail party really swing.
I guess they call it trickle-down economics.
That's funny.
It's supposed to be a charity thing. Drink and give money. I don't know, something for the kids. Hey, listen, man. We better look lively. This place is a nightmare. They just got cowboys running security downstairs. And something rotten in the air.
That didn't mean much. There was always something rotten in the air. The family we were protecting were local celebrities, rich parasites with delusions of humanity. The kind of people who end up in glossy magazines or body bags, depending on how their luck runs.
As if giving them a job to do, a local gang decides to interrupt the party the Broncos are holding, attempting to kidnap members of the family. It doesn't work well for the gang members, Max, Passos, and Brazil's local police sweeping them up with extreme prejudice. This actually causes a spat between the head of the police, who we can catch as Becker, who was at the party, semi-lying about the undercover cop, and another undercover cop who we don't know the name of.
You're okay. You're okay. Yeah. Come on, get up. Come on, get up. You're okay. Come with me. Just come on. It's okay. Stay right here. It's okay.
Ei, vocês aí! Que porra vocês estão fazendo? A justiça local?
Que porra você acha que é, falando com meus homens assim?
Você acha que tem o direito de matar as pessoas a sangue frio, Becker?
Cala a boca, cuzão! Continua dando multas. Não põe o nariz onde não é chamado. Vamos!
Me ajuda, cara.
Chama uma ambulância!
Me ajuda.
Fuck.
Heads up, I won't be translating the scenes that are entirely in Portuguese. I don't speak the language, so I couldn't even if I wanted to, and I think it adds to the overall nature of us and Max being a fish out of water. Max's confusion does lead to him learning the name of the gang that launched the attack, the Commando Sombra, from Passos, and that whoever that other undercover cop is, he isn't a part of the UFE, the 55th Battalion of the City Police, otherwise known as the Unidad de Forças Especiais, unlike Becker. With job well done, Max heads back to his apartment for more drinking and pill popping until he's needed for another job. Protecting Marcello, Fabiana, and her sister Giovanna, a good egg who does a lot of humanitarian work who notes that the rise in missing persons is growing day by day, as they attend a local nightclub. The Broncos seem to appreciate Max, with the now bodyguard noting that he does have a strange relationship with them. He likes Marcello, but can't stand his driveling. Unfortunately, someone invited the Commando Sombra to the club, their leader Serrano leading a successful kidnapping of Fabiana despite Max and Passos' attempts to stop them, preventing the group from also taking Giovanna, who's apparently on a first-name basis with Raul. Another heavy night of drinking and popping, leading into the next day where the Bronco brothers figure out what to do with the ransom note they have received.
Well, what choice do we have? We have never paid out ransoms before. But I don't know. I don't like the feeling of this. What about you, Max?
I don't know. I'm no expert on hostage negotiations. I know people who are, but they're in America.
We don't have time for America.
I know you're right, Marcelo. It's not like I don't have the money to pay.
Father made a lot of money. We have always been targets. We all know that. But much as it pains me, I don't see we have a choice. Maybe after we pay, we find out who did it. We have them... Well, we all know what I'm saying.
Who do you think is targeting your family?
Haters.
Who can say? Life in this country is not easy, you can see that.
Victor is opting to pay it as the Broncos, specifically Rodrigo, as he is the current patriarch, have the money to do so, and it isn't like Rod hasn't bribed people before. A drop in the bucket it will be, though it is odd that the Commando Sombra have chosen the Broncos, as they don't operate out of the immediate area and are more interested in the drug business nowadays. Still, Max and Passos are all up for delivering the money to the gang at a local football stadium, a plan that would have gone without a hitch if it weren't for some unknown third group interrupting the exchange. Well armed and trained unlike the Commando Sombra, this group easily takes the money and runs, leaving Max and Passos high and dry as they are now forced to sneak into a CS-controlled dock to rescue Fabiana. On the helicopter ride out of the stadium, Max reminisces over the start of this venture in Brazil. Max was essentially run out of the New York, New Jersey area for killing the son of the current mob boss Anthony DeMarco because he was being a racist, sexist dick, and Max was obstinate. That's what happens when you live your life in bars and well-worn musty clothes, but it at least means Passos found Max and gave him a job opportunity. Another side note for me, I'm rolling up both parts of the New York story into one, as it is essentially a giant gunfight with Max and Passos lying low in Queens until they escape to Brazil. Back in the present, we and Max learn that the name of that third group is the Crosha Preto, the Black Badge, a paramilitary group that acts as a police militia within Sao Paulo, but are in fact basically in the same category as the CS. Someone tipped them off to the money, but who that may be is tricky to find out. The government of Sao Paulo already has a hard time tracking criminals, so one group masquerading as a police militia makes things blurry. Either way, Max blames himself for Fabiana's kidnapping, but Passos' pep talk gets Max to focus on the mission, even if he finds the sentiment bullshit.
We wouldn't be out here in the middle of nowhere looking for some broad who got pinched on my watch.
That's what we tell ourselves, huh? It's all our fault.
No, I'm serious. By the time they grabbed the girls, I was half cut. I ain't slipping, man. I'm slipped. I'm a bad joke.
Max, we work private security. We're all ex-soldiers, ex-special forces, ex-cops, ex-good guys. We all have our reasons why we became ex. Maybe now we can put things right, okay?
So that was it, was it? Say the magic word and be absolved of your sins. If only shit were that simple, I'd have done it years ago. Me, I've been stuck in the past so long, I'd forgotten what year it was.
Hey, Max, quit your daydreaming. This is it. It's over there. I'm gonna cut the engine. Glide in.
Don't go anywhere.
Not that it matters though, Fabiana once again slips through the duo's fingers. An empty night of drinking later, Max and Passos have a meeting with the bossmen, who are quite agitated. Oh, and Becker is here as well to help ease Rodrigo in this time of crisis. It seems like this is on the behalf of Victor, who calls Becker, Marcello, and Passos away on a helicopter ride, leaving just Rodrigo and Max to talk it out. Despite his earlier mentions of bribery, Max does proclaim that Rod is a decent man for what it is worth, and he's at least self-aware, noting that the cops around him are as crooked as they come, apparently one by the name of Da Silva wanting a bribe from the mogul.
I had so many plans, Max.
Didn't we all?
I was born into great fortune. Sometimes it feels like I have done nothing apart from being a rich man in a poor country. The men I talk to, they only see money. Not my wife. I am not naive. She does not love me for my body.
Well, despite your good fortune, you're still a decent man.
Am I? I don't know. I try to be. But maybe I'm just another rich fool, just like the rest of my friends.
Com licença. Tem uma ligação para o senhor, policial chamado Sr. da Silva?
Diga que eu ligo mais tarde.
Sim.
Another band cop wanting a pension contribution. Do you think a pile of shit feels popular because it's surrounded by flies? Look at me. I'm a mess.
Before the sadness can hit maximum overload, though, the Crush of Prado have decided to be proactive again, targeting Bronco HQ with the security system in place failing to activate, leaving the Patriarch defended only by a dork, Dame, and Drunk until they get it back up. This wouldn't be another day in the life of Payne, however, if no one died around him, so 3 guesses for the 3 people who aren't still alive. This smells like a frame job as Rodrigo was locked tightly in the panic room when the system was rebooted, with the security footage recording it missing and the room going up in smoke from a bomb. This leaves Max on the lam and the prime suspect in Rodrigo's assassination, something that Marcello believes in even though it makes no sense, but through with being a sad sack, Max swears off drinking, shaves his head, dons a look that would make Heisenberg proud, and looks for Fabiana on his own in the favelas belonging to the CS.
In fact, it wasn't much good at all, but it was gonna have to do. At least I was facing in the right direction.
Hello.
Hello, Victor.
Max? Max, you're alive?
Of course I'm alive.
We did not know this. We are lost, Max. Our brother was everything to us.
I understand. Listen, I'm sorry about your loss. Both of you. Rodrigo was a good man. I failed him. But I was tricked.
What happened, Max?
I don't know.
Some guys from the Crush of Prado came into the building downstairs, so while me and the security guard were dealing with them, an assassin must have come in and executed your brother. At least that's how I think it happened.
No, you killed him, Poha. You killed my brother.
What are you talking about? I understand you're upset, but please, why the hell would I do that?
To get his money, to take his money.
How am I getting his money, Marcello? Please, think. I worked my ass off for your family. I saved your life twice, or more. And right now I'm going to get Fabiana.
Where is she? Where is Fabiana, eh?
She's in a place called Nova Esperanza.
How do you know this, Max?
One of the Crotch of Prado told me just before he died.
Please, bring our sister-in-law back to us, Max. Our family is being torn apart.
If you're wondering, our gringo doesn't get far, getting robbed of his shades, watch, and gun while earning the ire of the locals, before opting to think over his lack of strategy in a dingy strip club brothel. In steps De Silva, who we know the name of from the last scene, but we have actually seen him before. He was the other undercover cop getting angry at Becker for the Ufe's brutality. Either Rodrigo just typecast De Silva as being the same as the other meatheads, or he's slicker than the rest of them and knows how to keep his nose clean. Over a soda for Max and beer for himself, Wilson De Silva provides a bit of insight into this growing conspiracy against Max. The Crush of Prado, led by one Alvaro Neves, actually had a working agreement with the Broncos. That bribery I mentioned earlier paid to the Crush of Prado so that they could clear out some land so Rodrigo could develop it. They are also a highly right-wing group, favoring the likes of Victor Bronco, who share their same political beliefs. Neves was at the stadium, and though De Silva wanted to investigate the crime scene, a gag order forced him to blame it on some kids for causing a noise racket. Aha! He is a clean cop. Though he is slicker than most, as he pegs Victor Bronco as the mastermind, informing Max that the Crush of Prado let him and Passos go. Not only that, the Ufe themselves are in on this conspiracy, but in what way is yet to be determined. All De Silva knows that his and Max's heads are in the crosshairs, and that, oh by the way, Fabiana is right up the hill from his bar.
I got an order to blame it on some local street kids instead. Tell me, what happened there?
Nothing. We simply went to hand over some cash to this guy's clowns for a ransom exchange, when this guy's clowns jumped us and they shot everybody.
Apart from you and your boy Passos.
That's right. But we had to shoot our way out of there.
They let you go. It's okay, it's a little weird right now. But I know that Victor Bronco is involved in all this. I just don't know how or why. And I know that the Ufe are involved in all this as well, but I just don't know how or why. And you know what's gonna happen? The moment is gonna come along when I put all these pieces together, and at that moment, someone is gonna come along and put a bullet in my head. Anyway, listen. I think you might want this.
Thank you. I'll need it.
And if it's Fabiana Branco you've come looking for, I think she's up the hill.
So why don't you just go get her?
I don't know. I'm a cop. I mean, I'll fight corruption. I'll stand up to the rich and dumb, but if I go up that hill right now, I'll be dead in 3 minutes or less. Maybe you too, Max. You're in the jungle now.
A set of gunfights later, in which Max sees that Marcello and Giovanna have attempted to rescue Fabiana on their own to poor results, the damsel gets unceremoniously shot in the head right in front of Max, her sister, and Marcello, prompting our Baldy to have the second flashback to New York I've already covered.
Put the guns down! Let the girls go. No one needs to die, asshole.
Tomar no cu, seu gringo de merda! Vou matar sim!
Don't you kill her! Don't you!
Okay. Atividade! É a porra da UF! Ó, você fica com o gringo! A galera conta tem depois, vamos nessa, caralho! Atividade! Atividade, caralho! Seu filho da puta!
Here I was again, with all hell breaking loose around me, standing over another dead girl I had been trying to protect.
I'll give you a minute, buddy.
We'd only been married a short time. By now, she had been dead longer than I knew her. I still hadn't really forgiven myself for the Mona business, but I knew that was just grief. The insanity that comes with losing the life you had built. Michelle, I missed her with every part of my being. I hated the world for not killing me with her, and I hated myself for allowing this to happen to her and our little girl. But I knew I had to leave town.
Excuse me. Max Payne?
Somehow, I didn't think he was about to tell me I'd won the lottery.
With the remaining Commando Sombra escorting Marcello and Giovanna to who knows where, leaving an out of his gourd grunt to detain Payne to even poorer results, Max once again is on the chase, but to make matters even worse, the UFE have launched a raid on the favelas and are rounding up people CS and otherwise. Catching Marcello and Giovanna is the UFE who trade them over to the Crasha Prado. Human smuggling seems to be a profitable business for the two right-wing groups, but the underlying reason why they are buying and selling people outside of dollars is unknown. At least Max rescues Giovanna, running a bit late for Marcello as Neves's underboss roasts him to a crisp in a way that can be blamed on one of the many local gangs acting as perfect camouflage for the Crasha Prado's deeds, thus justifying their existence to the government.
Giovanna! It's gonna be okay. No, 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 no. You don't want to do that. Come on. Go, 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 go. Why did they do that to Marcella?
It's a legendary gang way of killing people.
This is no ordinary street gang.
I guess they want people to think they are. With this, they can justify the killings of today and the people they took.
Shh. Quem fez isso? Foi americano. Foi? Foi?
He's blaming you for the death of his friend.
Porra de americano. Cusão, morre, porra. Caralho. Contra ele. Mata ele. Pode deixar, eu mato.
All that leaves of the Broncos is Victor, who is now beyond suspicious. A day after resting in a drainage pipe, Max and Giovanna manage to contact Passos in the middle of dealing with more Crasha Prado grunts, who escorts Giovanna out since that's his pregnant wife. Betrayal, but a blessing in disguise that allows for Max to reconvene with Da Silva, who explains Passos is at least partially in on the grift.
I was just about to run to the roof when my savior and friend, the man whose unborn child I had just killed for, decided to leave without me.
Boy, Max! Get in! Quick!
I can't believe that bastard just flew off on me. After everything we've been through, I saved his girlfriend's life.
Who? Raul Passos?
Yeah, Raul Passos.
Yeah, I know. I thought you guys were very close.
We were.
Well, you know what? I did a background check.
Jesus.
I mean, I thought the two of you worked for Rodrigo Branco.
Yeah, so?
So? Did you get paid by Victor?
Victor, no.
Well, Raul Passos did. 6 times. Dating back to a few months before you turned up. He even paid for a ticket for him to go to New York.
Why?
I don't know, my guess is to meet you.
But why?
I don't know, maybe he liked you. Maybe he thought you needed a break.
That's funny.
I don't know, maybe he wanted some dumb gringo to come down here to shoot things up and maybe to take the watch for Rodrigo when he got shot.
I don't believe that.
Why? Because you're not a dumb gringo? Or because you are?
During a job down in Panama, he and Marcello moved laundered money for Victor, though it seems neither of them knew where it came from. And, well, Passos did help Max kill the attacking boat hijackers, so he's in the gray zone. Having his ear to the ground, De Silva and his straight-laced cops took note that a number of people went missing during the raid of the favelas, no one showing up in arrest records. However, a large number of buses did stop at the rundown Imperial Palace Hotel, which De Silva can't step into due to red tape, but Max can as he is off the record. Horrifically, if you don't get shot and killed by the Ufe or Crasha Preto, you wind up having your organs harvested on the black market to finance the two groups and Victor Branco. The plastic surgeon seen at the party is in charge of this wing of the operation. Disgusted and righteous with fury, Max lets the detained Serrano murder the Mad Doctor before moving on to destroying the building itself with the Crasha Preto's own C4.
Ufe, that deal at the favela was getting dirtier by the minute. Those bastards were clearly in bed with the Crasha Preto. Now we just had to find out why. Starting with a bit of bedtime reading for Mr. De Silva. When you've lived the kind of life I've lived, reality comes at you through a different lens. But nothing could have prepared me for what was on the other side of that door. I had to get those poor bastards out of there.
Get him out of here. Go. Go. Wait. I said get... Serrano.
Serrano. He looked pathetic. A man defeated. I walked away and left him to his own personal nightmare. Whatever hell this was De Silva had sent me into, I knew I had to put an end to it.
What the fuck is going on here? How much do you want?
What have you been doing?
I am a doctor. I help people.
What have you been doing here?
It's easy for you. Listen, I know people. They will kill you. I can help you. Trust me. Please, please.
What have you been doing?
I have a lot of money. Look, look. Lots of money. I do important research. Please.
Caralho! Caralho!
Espera, espera. Eu posso explicar tudo. Tudinho. Não, não. Por favor. Pelo amor de Deus. Por favor, não me mata. Não! Pelo amor de Deus!
E aí, doutor?
For all Serrano owed me, he'd paid enough. For now, I had bigger debts to call in.
Neves tries to get the last laugh on Max, but an interfering Passos makes the save to the chagrin of our born-again hero. Passos was indeed only conscripted, nigh forced to work under Victor on the political half of the scheme, so he was left in the dark when it came to the organ ring. That does mean he's a free agent now, Passos and Giovanna thanking Max for allowing them to escape out of Brazil, as he and De Silva prep to take down Victor and Becker via an inside job within the Ufe's precinct, where, yes, we find out that Rodrigo was assassinated on Victor's behalf. Yet while Payne gets the drop on Becker, Victor gets the drop on Payne, allowing the associates to escape the station and forcing Max and De Silva into a tight spot. Victor plans on leaving via plane, but with one last card left to play, Max does his usual routine of gunfire and mass casualties, killing Becker and preventing Victor from escaping, ensuring that he will face punishment for his crimes. On a sandy, picture-perfect beach, Max enjoys a cool can of soda and learns via the news that Victor hung himself in prison, though it was more likely local justice from all the families he tore apart with his organ-selling ring, before walking off into the sunset a man free of his chains. Ending the tale of Max Payne.
Realized they were correct. I wouldn't know right from wrong if one of them was helping the poor and the other was banging my sister.
Get in, Max! I'm in, just drive the fucking car! Go!
We had one card left to play.
Just get me close!
Wait, Max! No! Stop! Max! We have what we need on him now. Let him enjoy a trial and a spell in prison. Let him suffer. Trust me.
You know I'll walk. You'll walk with a lift!
The 55th Battalion of the City Police's Special Forces Unit, who have been implicated in human trafficking, has been disbanded indefinitely. Meanwhile, Victor Bronco, the politician at the center of the scandal, who is accused of laundering money from the scheme to fund his political campaign for mayor, was yesterday found hanged in his police cell. It's not yet clear whether his death was a suicide or simply retribution for his part in a scandal that has so many families missing loved ones that were kidnapped and killed. City officials say a full investigation is underway. Local residents expressed outrage, say they have been let down by both law enforcement and city leaders. And now, your local forecast. Boy, it's dark in some places, but it's sunny everywhere else. Over to Marisol with the weather.
Above anything else, Max Payne 3 is a story of redemption, of reigniting that spark to do the right thing, even if it may lead to the dark corners of the earth. It is about facing unequivocal evil and not backing down, opting to flush it out into the light. It is about reconciling the past and accepting what has happened, but choosing to fight for a better tomorrow, a better future. Max finally becomes whole, finding himself reborn from the ashes of the fall, a better, if still cynical person. In one of the wildest comparisons I'll ever make on this channel, Max shares a lot of ethos with Archer from Fate's Stay Night. Both originally set out to right a wrong within the world only to be slapped with the realism stick. As I don't know how many people are Fate adjacent who watch my channel or know one of the biggest revelations for the visual novel, I'll keep the spoilers to a minimum and just say that Archer chose to be a hero only for his ideals to get crushed underfoot. Saving people took a toll on him, and by the time we see him in Fate, he's a jaded counter-guardian that thinks playing the hero is pointless. All he got for his efforts was the realization that you can't save everyone. Max, meanwhile, is motivated by more personal goals, avenging the death of his family, but that is still motivated by the air of justice. The legal system wouldn't have taken down Horn. She was a god amongst men, the ruler of New York City, someone so powerful that laws and legality would bend to her impressive will. There needed to be a loose cannon, a cowboy cop that operated out of the realms of red tape to put a stop to her. Yet by chasing this case, Payne would ultimately fall into the same hole as Archer, realizing that the world still rotated with or without him, that ideals and beliefs were merely that, abstract concepts that affected the world in such a minuscule way. Let me ask this question. What did Max get out of killing Horn and stopping Valkyr? Outside of revenge, New York City is still a bubbling cesspit. Mobsters and gangs are still afoot, and it isn't like Max's family will come back. For that matter, Max's reputation is still in the gutter. Woden may have pulled strings to get Payne out of prison, but that just makes the general public suspicious. And even more, Max's warpath led to him meeting Mona, the start of the fall. Mona plays a big part within our detective's life as she is pivotal in Max's transformation from the spirit of vengeance to a deeply fallible and pathetic man. The plot of the fall is less overarching and more muddled. Instead of Max getting involved to right a wrong, Max purposefully chases after Mona when he sees that she is still alive. If you can recall, the fall sees Max openly work with a known criminal, Mona, and seek out Vlad for advice, Vlad being the main villain of the fall. For Max, it was the realization of his obsession with Mona that threw away his beliefs. He became so blinded by tunnel vision that he stopped caring about the concept of justice. He became broken by the choices that he made, wasting away at the bar a disgraced and bitter cop. Max had given up, lacking the drive to do anything besides crawl into his fractured psyche and contemplate his failings. A perfect stooge. What better way to show the pit of despair Max has fallen into than by his killing of DeMarco Jr. Yes, he was a blustering fool who acted like he owned the place and made deliberate threats to Max and the other bargoers, but he reads like the type of guy that is all show, no go. Ballless, acting high and mighty because his dad runs the underworld of New York. The only reason why he and Max get into a scuffle is because Max decides to not leave Marty's. An action that sees the death of Junior through a snapshot decision from Max that was handled about as poorly as Max's liver. The slaying of Junior was pointless. Don DeMarco's revenge holds much of the same weight as Max's plight within the first game. The roles have been reversed. A lot of the plot developments in 3 play on this catatonia. As long as Max is able to booze it up and get paid for having to protect the rich and vapid, it doesn't matter to him. This is the exact antithesis of his earliest incarnation. Max took a buyout. Per his own words, Payne became a rent-a-clown with a gun. He wouldn't look out of place working for the likes of Horn, Woden, or Vlad. 2 out of 3 of those people are woefully corrupt, viewing human life as expendable to their goals, while one is morally dubious due to his connections to the inner circle. That's what makes the Broncos stand out against the previous antagonists. Their reputation doesn't precede them. The most they have in common with the other members of the Rogues Gallery is that they share some of the stylings of Vlad. The Broncos, particularly Marcello and Rodrigo, are both polite and respect Max. Our former detective even regards Marcello as one of the only few friends he has left. Unlike Horn or Vlad, their base is out in the open. The Broncos are a financially wealthy family backed by their real estate company and political sway within Sao Paulo. They aren't a shady business head in the pocket of the American government or a Russian mobster who rose to power after the outcomes of Max's one-man war. The Broncos are established entities that lack that edge. Even their open duplicity is mostly connected to Marcello's need to snort lines, a wrinkle so dismissible as that's just a personal preference, and Rodrigo's bribery, another aspect that I can handwave using the background of Sao Paulo's political web. America and Brazil are two different countries with radically different cultural developments, so what is viewed as shady here is just the norm over there and vice versa. While that may seem like an obvious statement, I mean, anyone knows that the cultural zeitgeist of Japan and, say, Australia are wildly different. You don't need to gelatinous flesh construct to relate that obviousness out. This is a key component of the story. Max doesn't know the situation of the country he's operating in. The likes of the Ufe and Crasha Preto are foreign concepts to him. First off, while the Ufe are bandied about as Sao Paulo's branch of law enforcement, that is a disingenuous view. At best, they are a private police force that can have its services bought and sold. At worst, they are the exact same as any number of the street gangs in Brazil. The only contrast is financial backing. Crasha Preto is the Ufe under a divergent flag. Many former members of the Ufe are founding figures for Crasha Preto, and they both use the same tactics. Ufe and Crasha Preto enforce their rule with a blend of paramilitary training and high-end firepower. They both target street gangs and the poor of Sao Paulo, raiding the favelas for political enemies and undesirables. Both are considered right-wing organizations, lending aid to politicians that share their same viewpoint. Only one is legally allowed to do what they do. And it just so happens that there is a current election going on involving Victor Branco, is labeled as right-wing, who's losing to his left-wing counterpart, who is more stringent on the Ufe's crimes and the general chaos in Sao Paulo. Max Payne 3's conspiracy isn't befitting of the word. This is just open corruption. But because Max is not only living at the bottom of a bottle with his blinders on and doesn't have a grasp on anything related to Brazil, a lot of these details fail to register for him. Like, just saying out loud that Victor Branco, a right-wing politician, is running for re-election in the midst of two highly militaristic and right-wing groups staging attacks against thugs that have kidnapped and killed members of his family is way too convenient. Not only does he get the public sympathy, as he is the last member of his illustrious family left alive, but he fulfills his political agenda while keeping his hands clean for the most part, as the direct connections are hidden. Victor is playing everyone for fools, a parasite gorging on the blood of its family and supporters. He has weaponized the very political climate of Sao Paulo. In short, the rich get richer while the poor stay poor or are grounded into paste for the rich. Max, and by extension the Commando Sombra, was merely the fall guy for the dirty dealings of Victor, Ufe, and Crasha Preto because he was an outside factor. An American, a gringo, someone who was far away from home and couldn't return. A disgraced cop who fell into hard drinking and pill-taking after the deaths of his family and falling into aiding known criminals. The glue that keeps this charade going, as anyone who would be able to squeal would just be eliminated by the Ufe and Crasha Preto. This whole entire enterprise is based solely on the idea that Max will either drink himself to death or get killed in one of the many attacks launched by the Commando Sombra, Crasha Preto, or Ufe. That's why Passos has partial immunity. He was implicit in hiring Max under Victor's instruction and ran part of the grift down in Panama, laundering what I can only assume was organ money, which Passos didn't know the source of. He was only told to protect the money, not where it actually came from. Passos was a pawn that only knew the bare minimum of what he needed, that being the political side of the plan. He was straitjacketed by implication in that his wife was pregnant, making her an obvious target. He could be beaten back into line. What Victor and his associates didn't plan for was Max going off script. That little sore spot of seeing a woman in danger. Fabiana and later Giovanna are the reasons for why Max ultimately uncovers the organ ring. Without the repeated failings of rescuing Fabiana and the guilt of having let down Rodrigo leading to his assassination, Max wouldn't have bumped into De Silva at the strip club. It proves that even in his bleakest moment, there was still a spark waiting to be ignited within Max. While the three Branco brothers are guilty of crime, Marcello aiding Victor in laundering, Rodrigo bribery, and Victor the plot of this game, Fabiana was an innocent bystander, another pawn. Max's choice to rescue her by his lonesome wasn't because he was ordered to do so, he wanted to. And while he does indeed fail, it's that initial motivation that is the important part of this. Max, after all the heartache and pain he has been in, finally buckles the fuck back down and does something not because it will be easy for him, he'll get a reward, or whatever superficial reason you can provide. He chose to go after the Commando Sombra on their own turf because it was the right thing to do. Was it a suicide mission? Yes. Could he have easily died at any step of his nonsense plan? Also yes, Max is no stranger to nil chances. Max Payne 1 is predicated as an insane one-man war against the underbelly of New York. All Max has is determination and grit, which have been weathered by age and abuse. He's no longer a spry detective, merely a worn-out piece of grizzle. But that tiny flicker of integrity, of being a hero not because it is easy or because the world will care in the long run, is what carries him through the later half of this journey. He undergoes the same growth as Shiro does during his battle against Archer. Saving everyone is an impossibility, but still trying is worth the effort. That tiny spark would go on to become a raging inferno come Max's discovery at the hotel. He comes face to face with unabashed evil, one that targets the weak, the poor, the unfortunate, and strips their lives away for the sake of the vapid, the rich, and the corrupt. Seeing this absolute debasement of human life pushes Payne past the point. This is the death of his family on a governmental scale. Horn and Vlad's plans didn't have this type of ramification. Both their gigs were in a way separate from the general public. Neither were wholesale kidnapping people to turn them into glue, which, as Max says, is his problem. By far one of my favorite quotes from Payne, the exchange between him and Crasha Preto boss Neves is essentially Shiro and Archer's spat during UBW, right down to Max carrying a point from Neves pointing out that everyone Max ever tried to protect is dead, with the line, "At least I tried." It's that revelation alongside protecting the pregnant Giovanna that allows Max to reach his epiphany, that as long as he stays true to his ideals and tries to help those around him that need it, he'll be okay. Sure, he'll have to dive in the muck and mire, which isn't easy, and being a hero is a thankless job, but it is the right thing to do. This frees him from the ghosts of the past, and finally allows him to take those steps off into the sunset. It serves as the perfect ending for the tale of Max, as we've seen him at impossible highs gunning down Horn for the sake of justice, to despicable lows chasing Mona with blind obsession, back to where it all started. It's dark in some places, but sunny everywhere else. Tears by Health, Airport Shootout, easily in my top 10 favorite moments from video games.
There were Ufe all over the airport, and civilians were being moved out. Looking at it one way, shutting down the airport for their escape was a weird sort of compliment, but one I didn't need. It opened at the other end of the departure lounge. Be blown up today. They weren't here. I had to keep moving down through the airport.
It is when all the aspects of the presentation come together and create such a powerful moment, from the fantastic soundtrack by Health blaring the main theme of the game Tears, to the excellent sound direction between how weapons and characters sound when in action, to the various other effects like how bullet time drowns out the backing track to heighten your senses, to the way everyone is animated, the rage engine taking the firefights of Max Payne to the next level with ragdolls and realistic reactions to getting shot and bumping into objects, to James McCaffrey once again putting in a stellar performance as the lead man. The airport shootout is a microcosm of this game's presentation and how finely tuned and crafted it is. It is one of the exact moments people think of when you say the name Max Payne 3, and it is my most liked scene from the entire trilogy. This is a guy who has burned the song Tears onto a CD. It is up there for me in terms of video game music. But to take a bit of a step back, let me go on to the general feel or vibe of the game. This is an ugly presentation. Not in the traditional sense of the word. The only downside of Max Payne 3's stylings is that the graphics have become slightly outdated, and you could say this about any game of this era that chose to aim for realism, but in the way the story is presented.
You know Anastasia? Oh yeah, I know Anna.
Other words I would bring up are gritty, grimy, uncomfortable, etc. You feel like a fly on the wall a lot of the time when watching cutscenes, the camera itself acting as its own character with the way that it moves, bobs, and shakes. The constant video effects, from the pounding and pulsing lights to the way how colors wash out or how scan lines overlay themselves over the action, presents the idea that this is found footage or something captured on, say, the likes of LiveLeak. What you are watching hasn't been censored in any way. You see the grim reality of Sao Paulo and all it entails.
There she was, right in front of me. The drunk fool in me wanted to make a play. But I had just about enough sense to know that I'd end up with another dead girl in my arms if I did.
The late 2000s and early 2010s had a sort of obsession with this style of presentation. Kane and Lynch Deadman and Dog Days were a trendsetter in this approach, if especially rough around the edges. If you want to go further back, Manhunt was the initial incident, but not fully realized due to technical limitations. Max Payne 3 reeks of a 10-day alcohol bender coated in the blood of innocence, the fragrance of gunsmoke, and the wretched bile of death. It is uncompromising in its approach for better or worse, as yes, the visual effects can be nauseating at times and prompt bouts of epilepsy in those who suffer from it, but I believe that was the point. Not that the game wanted to prompt an epilepsy attack, but to make the player feel uncomfortable. It's a lot like standing in a bumpy nightclub full of vain pseudo-celebrities snorting the nose candy while you're suffering from a hangover straight from Mother Nature. It's almost like I described the opening of the second level. Max Payne 3 does its best to put you in the shoes of the eponymous character, complete with headaches and hangovers. The icing on the cake is that the visual stylings lead to its own blocking and formatting during the cutscenes, making the movie analogy hit that much closer to home. It's like watching a crime drama with the way scenes intersplice and cut into each other, with important words and phrases lingering to draw attention to their importance.
The fireworks display was clearly in my honor, making sure everyone knew to roll out the red carpet for their surprise guest.
Much of the actual heavy lifting from animations to graphics is carried by the Rage engine, Rockstar's proprietary engine used since Grand Theft Auto 4, or Rockstar Games presents Table Tennis, but most of you probably know it from GTA. One thing that is always noticeable from Rage is how characters react to environmental sources or character actions. This is my fancy explanation for, wow, these ragdolls are what was missing from the earlier Max Payne games. I do love me a good death animation or character reaction from taking damage, and this game has it in spades. The bullet time dodge is now affected by the world, so if Max shoot dodges right into the side of a wall or any other object, his body will realistically react to careening into door frames, walls, janitor buckets, you name it. A shoot dodge can be fully interrupted if Max flings himself into anything solid enough, causing him to take a tumble and force him to gather himself. Bullet reactions are spectacular across the board as enemies flail and slump when shot, their bodies twitching even after they've been killed, leading into some having the dead man's trigger finger. The bullet cam, which is used for when you kill an enemy within last stand or kill the last enemy in a group, allows you to see the carnage in all its detail, bullet wounds and all. Max's model is now regularly painted with exit holes whenever he gets shot, adding even more gristle to the gruff former DEA agent. In the midst of all the dirt and grime, the world of Max Payne 3 is a darkly beautiful one, with the cold streets of New York City, the high rises of Sao Paulo, and the clustered favelas rendered with a lot of care. Max Payne 3 takes you to a lot of locales, each embodying its own personality. Not only does the overall atmosphere return from the earlier Max Payne games, but the varied locations eases one of my minor complaints from the Remedy duology that I just didn't find New York all that interesting. New York City still has the dreary atmosphere like it did back then, but it comes across as more distant than isolating.
I think I'm done saying my goodbyes. Let's get out of here. Hey, thanks, bro.
The home that once was to Payne has lost all meaning. The New York that he once knew of Michelle is nothing but an American dream, the snowfall tinged with somberness as there is nothing left connecting Max to the city. Meanwhile, Brazil is a colorful smorgasbord, the insipid highlife contrasting with the locals, but Max feels out of place. He doesn't speak the language, and because he's American, not many people care to spend the time of day talking to a gringo. The upbeat population is undercut with a hint of danger, and that's not even getting to the horrors lying below. Visually speaking, this is my favorite game of the three, and that even extends to the audio as well. Handling the entire soundtrack for the game was the American noise rock band Health, with their knack for synthy guitar chords, heavy drums, loud bass, and ventures into remixing. Their soundtrack is as bombastic as I've described it, but it also has quieter moments, toying with samba instruments in the Brazilian levels such as the favela. Their music acts as the undercurrent for the game, with it going softer when out of combat, only to ratchet up in the midst of a firefight. They are a flexible band as well, with the pause screen music a remix version of the classic Max Payne theme, dependent on what stage you are in, with the track taking a more jaunty vibe when in Brazil. The magnum opus for the OST, however, is the track I listed at the top of this section. Tears. Unequivocally, this is the theme of Max Payne, the character to me. A vocal track, it conveys the swirl of emotions Max is in, torn between his desire to move forward in his life and the ghosts that haunt him. He wants to finally take that step out of the shadows and into the light, but he feels that he will be throwing away his past. Ironically, Jake Dusick, the vocalist for Health, is taking the role of Max's wife Michelle, telling him from beyond the grave to stop wallowing in his sadness and guilt for her sake, that he deserves to walk into that sunset the hero that he can be lest he die alone. It is a premier video game track alongside the likes of Crush 40's outings, the vocal tracks of Devil May Cry and Silent Hill, and is such an emotionally powerful song. To end this off, the vocal performances of the cast are all around fantastic, though excuse me for wanting to hone in on James McCaffrey as Max Payne. He's come a long way from the stoicism that marked the character's first outing or the confusion and uncertainty of the second game. Owing to the age of the character, McCaffrey plays Max as weathered and worn out. The usual monologues seem less stoic and more tired and depressed. The front has been eroded, leaving only a defeated man drinking himself to death. And yet, this is the most emotive McCaffrey has been with the character.
That was the last of the explosives. I just hoped it was enough to bring down the building. And all the evil in it.
Who wants to take a shot? You see what this is? Come on, anybody? Want to be a hero? I got nothing to lose, let's do it!
Que porra que tá acontecendo aqui?
Senor Neves.
What the fuck is your problem, man?
My problem? My problem? Wanna know what my problem is? You're turning humans into glue! That's what my fucking problem is!
I don't know what you're talking about, American. All I know is what I hear about you. You bodyguard for the Brancos. They are all dead. You help the poor. Today, many of them dead. You are a proper American hero.
At least I fucking tried.
Well done with your effort. The whole city is grateful. The great American savior of the poor.
That's right.
You think you made any difference? You think stopping this legitimate business venture is helping anyone?
Legitimate? You're stealing people's organs!
We pay for everything! We have the record!
Oh, so people can sell their livers? Their hearts? Their eyeballs? You're insane, you sick fuck!
We kept people safe in the city! Decent people! Safe! I know a lot of powerful people.
Well, your powerful people aren't gonna help you out of this one, buddy.
Take Max's conversation with Passos on the boat ride towards the Commando Sombra. He throws out the phrase, "I ain't slipping, man, I'm slipped. I'm a bad joke," with McCaffrey providing an almost weak inflection, as if Max knows how in vain his attempt was in rescuing Fabiana or handling the money at the stadium. Contrast that with his tirade against Neves. Max's voice cracks because of how righteously angry he is. there is so much texture to the voice of Max, akin to how rough and beat up he visually looks. He's a man who has seen a lot, with McGathy's inflection mirroring that. It just once again proves that Max Payne is one of the best voice protagonists in a video game of all time. Max Payne 3, keeping with the nature of the previous two games, is a third-person shooter, but the recurring mechanics have once again been remuxed. But before that, though, we have a difficulty system to cover, yeah? There are 5 in total this time around, but New York Minute and Dead Men Walking have seen the boot from the main campaign. Instead, we have easy, medium, and hard alongside hardcore and old school. Unlike before, the 3 basic difficulties are unlocked from the start, with the extra modes unlocked after beating the game on hard. This isn't like 2 where you have to work your way up the ladder from normal to ball busting. Easy, medium, and hard are pretty easy to describe. Bullet damage on max, painkiller pickups, and awarded bullet time on kills change depending on what difficulty you choose. You get more time and painkillers on easy, the standard amount on normal, and less on hard. Hardcore and old school take even more from you than hard, but a key factor between the difficulties outside of what I just listed is how the game handles checkpointing. When you die, you reload from a checkpoint. Quick saving has gone the way of the dodo here, though checkpoints are generous, but if you die repeatedly at a section, the game will gift you painkillers as a sort of dynamic difficulty scaling. Easy and medium will give you a full clip in all your guns when you die, then start awarding 1 painkiller bottle for each 3 times you die until you have 9 painkillers. Hard does it every 5 times you die, but limits your painkiller cap at 2, which includes any painkillers you already have on you. Hardcore and old school lack this feature, with old school locking out the last stand mode, which I will cover with the bullet time mechanics. Difficulty can be changed whenever you want, so you can experiment with which mode is the right one for you. As is the standard for my channel, I stuck with the perceived normal difficulty, medium, and found the game still within the realm of that Max Payne swing. That being, enemy reaction time is still set to near godlike, and bullets actually hurting. You die fast, as is the series tradition. And likewise, you can kill fast with bullet time. For Max Payne 3, bullet time has been stripped back down to its counterpart in 1. Killing no longer awards adrenaline for golden bullet time, you just restore your reservoir. However, you can still bullet dodge even without any gauge. Any earned time is used for slowdown, so you can easily and accurately pick off targets. That fundamentally means that using bullet time dodge is a free action, but a few caveats have been added to it. Using bullet time dodge while having any bullet time gauge will drain it for as long as you bullet time dodge. Now, this is pretty ignorable when you do a dodge on ground level, but using a bullet time dodge off an elevated platform to a lower one means you can be wasting gauge better spent on slowdown. That's why if you hit the slow down button in the midst of bullet time dodging, you cancel out the slow time effect of the dodge, saving yourself some gauge. 2. Bullet time dodge is now subject to the environment. If you aren't careful, your dodge can be cancelled because you flung yourself into the side of a door, a wall, or any solid object, causing Max to stumble and take a bit of damage. The amount taken, by the way, is dependent on what you dodged into. Taking a Samoa Joe bump off the stairs isn't good for your ribs, turns out. What will kill you most, however, is the bumbling, as Max does have to take a while to get back up, a scenario that leaves himself defenseless for the most part. That said, Max can still fire from the floor like in 2, granting gunfights a chaotic feel, as you can practically stumble and bumble around. Added to this is Last Man Standing. Upon taking lethal damage and holding on to at least 1 painkiller, time will slow down as the enemy who fired the shot becomes your focus. If you can fire back and hit him, not only does he die in 1 shot, you survive and go back down to half health, eating the painkiller. The downsides of this is that certain enemies, mostly bosses, and damage types are exempt from this, killing you outright. You lose practically all stored bullet time reservoir, and you get put into that bumble state, which can lead you back into either eating up another painkiller off last stand, kill you, or both. See, you have to be able to hit the person who killed you, so if you can't do that, say because Max is awkwardly behind something as he is slowly dying, you're just dead. For the more patient or careful player, this is where cover comes into play. Slotting into gameplay quite well, cover is cover. It acts as a barrier between you and gunfire, but it doesn't protect you fully. Enemies are more than willing to rush your position, flank you, and merely shooting out of cover leaves you vulnerable to damage. Whether aiming out or blind firing, you can be hit. Of course, cover acts as a good staging ground for slowdown or bullet time dodge, allowing you to push the offensive while either staying in a good position or moving between some. Added to his repertoire, Max now has a role which acts as a more defensive shoot dodge. You can't attack while doing it, but it makes you a smaller target and can be done in or out of cover, or while picking up weapons. Returning from Max Payne 2, there are AI companions for certain levels, usually in the form of Passos who helps you gun down foes, though it is a game over if he does die due to your testing out the game's failure states, or leaving him alone for a set period of time. Alternative failures are a thing in 3, as taking too long in certain sections causes a game over alongside having AI companions die. Dying by the truckload though will be the random assortment of goons sent your way. Level progression is still linear, barring finding the golden gun pieces, which upgrades your guns if you find all 3, maximum 6, 2 sets for 2 guns in each stage, and collectible evidence that flesh out bits and pieces of the story, with baddies blocking your every step. As before, they are separated into a few categories, this time by allegiance: Commando Sombra, NYC Mobsters, Crasha Preto, and Ufe. This usually means the armaments they go into battle with are different. Commando Sombra typically come at you with small arms like micro 9mm, 1911s, and shotguns, both sawn-off and long rifle versions, without the aid of body armor. They wear street clothes, and only in their hideouts do you see AKs and other automatic rifles. Mobsters are well dressed and carry most weaponry within the game, from pistols and submachine guns to AKs and shotguns. That said, they also don't wear bulletproof vests, allowing you to pick them apart at your leisure. Crasha Preto and Ufe have almost the same overlap in weapon types: high-end pistols, revolvers, rifles, submachine guns, and shotguns with added tactical gear on them, but the major divergence is Crasha Preto only arms their guys with body armor, while Ufe not only has body armor, but helmets on their men. Body armor, like in previous Max Payne games, soaks up a number of shots before it gives out, but how it works here is drastically separate from the previous games. Landing shots at enemies in body armor causes them to stumble around and trip up, sending them to the floor for a little while. This ties them up, allowing you to hit around the armor either by shooting the arms, legs, or head. Helmets, meanwhile, protect from a single headshot, causing the same outcome with shooting body armor after you hit one. Crasha Preto and Ufe also have big units in the form of armored gunners that take a number of headshots to put down if you want to kill them quickly. Standard enemy reactions to damage are usually, react to being shot. With the Rage engine, they can flop around after taking damage, still fire their gun even after dying, or both at the same time. Shooting a foe's legs causes them to buckle, while arm shots throw off aim. If a goon is running, landing a shot will lead them to trip. Guns are still the modern affair, though Max is now limited to carrying 3. 2 sidearms, a pistol, machine pistol, or sawn-off shotgun, and 1 two-handed weapon, a submachine gun, rifle, shotgun, or launcher. Small arms can be akimboed, but at the cost of dropping whatever two-handed weapon you have. That said, any combination of sidearms can be dual-wielded, such as dual pistols, machine pistols, or sawn-off shotguns, or a combination of the 3 weapons like holding a pistol in one hand and a sawn-off shotgun in the other. You fire both when akimbo, though sometimes dual-wielding is more effective than having a long arm. Damage is pretty hard to quantify across the board as we are using real-world logic, so what you will mostly focus on is playstyle and magazine size. Shotguns are deadly up close but suffer from range. Rifles and submachine guns can lay down fire but are woeful against body armor, those kinds of factors. Getting close enough to an enemy allows you to perform a melee kill, but the same can be said vice versa. Very rarely will you be put into turret segments as part of a set piece. Most of the time you have infinite ammo contending either with a heat gauge or having to reload. Bosses are in this game, but follow the Vlad line of thinking. They're more puzzle-based or taking advantage of certain mechanics like being able to shoot any type of explosive out of the air. Grenades are a thing in this game, but only certain enemies carry them and their overall nuisance factor has been eliminated. No more corner traps, thank you very much. As mentioned earlier, there are collectible clues and gold weapon parts, but there are also grinds, the game's achievements. These range from killing all enemies in one of the many slow-motion set pieces to spending X amount of time in shoot dodge. These extend into the other modes like arcade and multiplayer, with New York Minute taking up residence in the former as it is tied to the grind. Having said my piece about the story, I won't go into it as much. The most I will say here is that the Max Payne zingers are back with a vengeance. Like with the original game, 3 has a lot of quotables, and as such, here are a few of my favorite ones.
These guys weren't messing around. This place was like Baghdad with G-strings. A couple of more seconds and I'd have given some poor street cleaner a crappy start to his day. This was a mess. Where the hell was Passos? We were 2 failed cops failing miserably at being bodyguards. He approached everything with about as little preparation as I did. Maybe that's why we got along. So this was it. My easy retirement money. My blood-stained 401k. A chance to drink for free while chaperoning socialites around town and making sure the poor people didn't get too close. The brochure sure didn't mention any of this shit. I had a hole in my second favorite drinking arm, and the only way we were likely to get Fabiana back now was in installments. Whoever our uninvited guests were, I was about done playing soldiers. I'd gotten into my share of bar fights, but that night made me wish for any one of those. It ain't often you get nostalgic for getting your ass kicked by 6 sailors on shore leave. The real security guards had been run off, paid off, or bumped off. That left us. It wasn't a fantastically comforting thought. I'm a self-righteous pain in the ass, but I'm not above embezzling office supplies. I didn't know what the hell I was gonna find up there, but I sensed it wasn't gonna be a stripper bursting out of a cake. So much for a lazy Sunday afternoon. My next trick would be a high wire act with a fiery pit for a safety net. It was nice that no one was shooting at me for a change, but I'd take shot in the head over a slow roast on a spit any day of the goddamn week. I felt dumb and exposed. I missed the booze. Not that it mattered. Sober or drunk, I was hardly undercover. I stood out in this place like a streetwalker in a monastery. Well, they weren't gonna help me, and who could blame them? I was a dumb American in a place where dumb Americans were less popular than the clap. It was Monday afternoon, and I'd already been thrown out of a party, gone to a strip club, and got into a bar fight. This latest midlife crisis was certainly ticking all the boxes. I'd have felt worse taking someone's medication if everybody in that place hadn't been trying to kill me. The place was swarming with cops, but they weren't there for me, as far as I could tell. And I'd blundered my way into enough clusterfucks for one day. I was still alive, and still not all that happy about it. Why did the easy way out never come? Maybe I thought I didn't deserve it. Man, I was guessing these guys didn't spend their spare time studying the Geneva Convention. Jesus Christ, these bastards made the NYPD look like the Hare Krishnas. I couldn't make much sense of what I was seeing, but I had the feeling it wasn't that strange for anyone else. Anytime those guys decided to join the party, you could be sure it wasn't gonna end in a piñata and a slice of cake. When half the local police force and a crew of paramilitary psychopaths want to send you upstairs, I reasoned the crowd was as good a place as any. At least when we got shot, maybe some kind soul would take a video and put it on the internet. And the band played on. I wasn't too excited about the acoustics in this place. A couple of gunshots would sound like I'd walked in here with a goddamn marching band. The Imperial Palace Hotel was a 5-star bona fide shithole. There it was, the soundtrack to my life. And, for a few seconds, came harmony.
The king is back, baby. baby, dispensing out one-liners like it's going out of style. This does also mean I won't be covering aspects of the presentation, as this video has turned into a spooge fest the whole way through, like usual, something I find to be quite enjoyable, leaving me just the gameplay to go into. While Max Payne 1 and to a lesser extent Max Payne 2, mostly because of the reworked time mechanics, were controllable mayhem, Max Payne 3 leans more on the side of chaos and making the most out of a bad situation. Years of coasting through gunfight after next has taken a toll on Max, making his usual antics not as feasible for someone his age with a damaged liver. While shoot dodging and slowdown are still major parts of your kit, you won't be clearing out rooms like you mostly did in Max's formative years unless you practice a lot with the game. You'll be taking things a bit slower, playing craftier with hiding behind cover and blind firing, catching goons as they attempt to flank or transition to their own. Instead of pushing the pace, you now have to contend with it, forcing enemies into poor situations to easily take them out, or taking the utmost care with your slowdown to land those important shots. It is a nice evolution of the cycle of Max Payne gameplay, giving us the logical conclusion of a fat, bald American well into his 50s still trying to John Woo his way through his problems. This in turn leads me into the additions to the shoot dodge and how you can wildly crash into anything and everything. It is another layer you have to deal with, as thinking about the perfect shoot dodge to score those meaty headshots can be interrupted by flopping like a fish onto some hard surface, screwing whatever your game plan might be and putting you into a disadvantageous spot. You have now given the goons on the other side of the gunfight a perfect opportunity to put you in the ground 6 feet under. Likewise, the opposite is also true. Taking advantage of the crumple means you can shoot dodge out into an open street and fall into cover. The alleyway in the first New York mission has a perfect example of this, as you can crash into the wall next to the dumpster, pushing Max up against it and granting him some reprieve. This is one of the few third-person shooters that I think has a good cover system, because playing this game entirely stop and pop isn't what Max Payne 3 was intended for. This is a vanquish situation where cover is only as useful as much as you can take advantage of it. Stop and pop doesn't prevent you from being hit by bullets, and neither does blind firing. You are equally at risk of getting shot while hunkering down behind most cover as you are shoot dodging, if not more so, as cover can be destroyed and you are not moving, allowing grunts to get a beat on you. Instead, you need to blend your combat options together, using cover to launch into shoot dodges, or by implementing slowdown within cover to make your shots count. Playing risky will see it pay off, as sometimes a long dive can maximize your kill potential at the cost of your health. One factor of the shoot dodge I don't think I brought up is that it is affected by height. Shoot dodging from a higher spot to a lower one will see you remain in slowdown until either you cancel the time effect by your choice, or until you hit the ground. With this in mind, shoot dodging off the stairs in the stadium stands means you can take a number of Crusher Preto goons with you as long as your aiming is true and you don't waste ammo. Earning that bullet cam off a clever move like this is all worth it, doubly so since you can still control Max in the midst of it, as well as the slow-mo for it. Some of my favorite shots of the bullet cam is when I run up on a dude and viciously gun him down while still running, having Max enter the frame. Adding to the tiny detail, bullet cams are different for each bullet type, as while pistols, revolvers, and other cartridge-based weaponry zooms in on the bullet that landed the lethal blow, shotguns do it for the pellets. Moving to the levels themselves, there are a number of highlights from all 3 acts of the story. Starting off strong, the club level hits you with a nice blend of up-close and personal combat while shifting through civvies and hostiles, only to switch gears and focus on more open battles on the rooftop, giving you more room to be inaccurate. This is later followed up in the stadium, which has some of the longest ranged fights in the game, granting you a bit of a toy box to play with in regards to testing out how the bullet time mechanics work with the environment. Both New York stages are amongst the highest tier when it comes to quality gameplay. A mix of small-scale scuffles, mid-range standoffs, and set pieces oozes from the pores of the back streets of New York and the graveyard. The cemetery might be one of the best examples with how well the bullet time mechanics flow into cover, and vice versa, as gravestones are temporary cover, but they are numerous, allowing you to move your way safely up to where the mobsters are via shoot dodging, rolling, or slowdown. While I find the docks middling, it either needed more attempted stealth or play hard into the no man's land that is the dock, having you prioritize shoot dodging as your main defensive option, the favelas are never highlight of the game. Super close quarters mixed with enemies hiding in buildings, rooftops, or cover provides a unique challenge in the form of understanding where attacks are coming from. Much like Max at this point in time, you're out of your depth, leading a suicide mission into enemy territory where they have the advantage. You can be shot at from anywhere, meaning your head needs to be on a swivel to catch Commando Sombra sneaking up on you. The following level dealing with the Ufei in the favelas has the opposite effect. You're now the one able to ambush your foes. Catching the Ufei off guard is a high priority due to their increased durability and high-end weapons, with the layout of the area aiding in that. Panama might be the most unique. OC is going to get angry for that one, as will I at myself. Location for the Max Payne series, as one half takes place on a boat, the other the surrounding infrastructure. The cramped decks leave much to be desired in terms of maneuverability and cover, so being quick on the draw quicker than the previous levels will see you through the relatively tough shootouts. The final level, the airport, is a roller coaster ride from start to finish, featuring the highlights of the terminal shootout with Tears, the train duel, and the runway chase. It's an explosive finale in more ways than one, concluding with some of my favorite lines from the trilogy. While I will go into the weapon limit in a bit as it is a bit of a negative, I do like how it brings about more scrappy encounters. Switching from an empty long arm to akimbo small arms where Max drops the empty gun is a neat detail and flows well into the gameplay, as is roll grabbing dropped weapons from enemies, keeping you on the offensive and on the move. Probably my favorite small detail is that Max does carry on his monologue in real time during levels. If you take the time to explore an area or just generally sit around, Max will pipe up with some flavor text, such as him mentioning that the front doors of the bar are locked in the first New York level, and the collectible clues add a bit of depth in of themselves. My favorite one is the ex-cop you can run into, acting as a parallel to Max's life, as both are now retired and handling their post-cop life differently. Another one that I generally like is the idea of the older woman in the Panama level, where Max actively grosses himself out by reminding himself that Marcello had relations with her to get a free ride. He has a literal pause in his monologue as if the mental image was too disgusting for him to imagine, so he has to push the thought out of his head. Adds just another little detail to Max's character where guns, violence, and all that doesn't faze him, but Marcello blueberrying it up is what gets to him. Max Payne, ladies and gentlemen. Body armor makes its triumphant return to the jeers of everyone in the building. A lot of the later half of 3 is spent dealing with the Crusher Preto and Ufei, who are among the most sturdy of the 4 groups. If this was a case of Max Payne 1 or 2, I wouldn't be as annoyed, as the body armor modifier just means an enemy has more health. Instead of 3 body shots, you need around 4 to 6. Body armor here, meanwhile, stuffs a lot of bullet damage. More so than what actual body armor can block in real life. Instead of going down to about 5 assault rifle rounds, it can take a lot of bullets to break the armor of a Crusher Predator or Ufei member, with the only alternatives being landing armor leg shots or going for headshots. Or not? Question mark? Armor sometimes can't take 2 shotgun blasts from a sizable distance, but can chump rifle rounds all day. There is no consistency. Speaking of, arm and leg shots do shockingly little damage, as it takes about the same amount to break armor to kill someone with them, which is so odd in a Max Payne game. This is a series built on an ascended realism. I say this because Max should be dead with how much alcohol he drinks, painkillers he's popped, basically everything he's gone through. Encounters are swift and deadly. While you are usually outnumbered, you are never outgunned. Max has wits and bullet time, enemies have numbers but are paper thin. While body armor doesn't completely throw this balance out of whack, it does noticeably slow down the pace if you aren't playing like a pro, which 99% of us aren't. What doesn't help is that armored enemies take a dive when they get hit anywhere in it, which for close range encounters is actually pretty helpful, but for long distance targets, you've just made them that much harder to hurt. Whether via sheer distance of where the person is or if they fall into cover, having an armored foe not die from a few gunshots always meant that there would be the one I would forget about and wind up using a last stand because of it. Helmets add an extra layer to this like they do your head, as a headshot causes an immediate stumble, thus effectively blowing away your chance of an instant headshot follow-up unless you are in slowdown. Crusher Preto and Ufei get way too many leeways compared to the other Spec Ops groups Max has faced, like the Agents of Horn, that makes some of the later portions of Max Payne 3 a pain. For as fun as the raid on the Ufei station or the cubicle shootout in Bronco HQ with Crusher Preto is, the existence of the armor that those enemy types wear knocks those battles down a little for me. With the other 2 enemy families, Cover never felt like a necessity, but a useful tool that I could take advantage of. Shoot, dodging, and movement were still king. But for Ufe and Crasha Preto, it felt like the opposite, where cover took the higher priority, which just feels strange in the Max Payne series. Not completely awful, as the ebb and flow of Max Payne still lives on in this game, just the ratio is a bit weird. Somewhere between classic Max Payne and a combination of Red Dead and GTA 4. To cut a somewhat unfocused sentiment down to something understandable, it takes at least 1 to 2 levels to get used to Max in this game if you are coming from the Remedy duology, which plays so closely alike besides the bullet time changes. While all I've said previously is a nagging complaint rather than a massive grievance I have with this game, as 3 is molded out of the modern rendition of third-person shooters rather than 1 and 2's birth from the experimental age, and I'm not too fond of the current rendition of the third-person shooter genre besides Vanquish and other such cases, the boss fight against the Ufe underboss is honestly not a great segment. Instead of shooting at him until he dies like Jack Lupino, or even having Vlad's puzzle boss elements of baiting out grenade throws while you shoot out bolts, Bachmeier is the equivalent of the one gag from Naked Gun. The only threats are boredom and when he sends men at you, which only happens during the singular phase change. Because he is sitting behind cover and only blind firing, you can't get a good shot on him and must destroy the light fixtures above him to flush him out for a headshot. The battle is beyond passive, and if you do take an active role, Bachmeier has perfect accuracy, able to easily hit Max when he's blind firing. This turns the fight into waiting out a barrage of bullets that will never hit you as long as you sit behind cover until Bachmeier goes to reload, giving you about 3 seconds to damage the ceiling, which has an enormous amount of health. This also means that if you take lethal damage from Bachmeier, you're dead as you can't line up a shot on him. He's one of the few enemies I mentioned in gameplay that doesn't proc Last Stand, and dying sends you back to the beginning of this boring boss fight. Onto the weapons themselves, revolvers get the short end of the stick compared to their pistol counterparts because of reload time. This is strictly a single player issue, as weapon stats are a thing in multiplayer, so the slow reload of revolvers is actually offset by something there as opposed to actively being a hindrance in the main game. Shotguns kind of fall in the same category as well, but mostly because they are few and far between, while everyone carries either one of the many submachine guns or auto rifles. The Spaz 15 is a monster of a shotgun, but you get it so few and far between, so you'll basically have no ammo for it, and swap it for those trendy rifles that Ufe all seem to use. This is an issue connected to the weapon limit, which is another annoying aspect, as it basically means you'll be using the same few guns over and over again. Lastly, and this is more a personal preference and warning to those out there going into playing Max Payne 3, cutscene to gameplay ratio is heavily favored towards the movie side of things. Gameplay can be sparse at times, and 3 does dabble with the dreaded interactive cutscene at times where instead of sitting down your controller and watching what is unfolding, you have to move Max forward as plot happens. This occurs in the stadium and after the bomb goes off in Bronco HQ. Besides my disdain of these instances, which isn't a personal issue with Max Payne 3, but with AAA games development as a whole stemming all the way back to Half-Life 2, newsflash, having your character controllable in what amounts to an over-glorified exposition dump is a net negative to the experience, and a traditional cutscene not only works better, but isn't patronizing to the player. Do prepare for something close to MGS4. Again, this isn't a turnoff for me, as I know what I'm getting myself into. I like MGS4, but I know some might be scared off of the gameplay to cutscene measurements. Also, this game does have glitches, which is funny to bring up as the last time I played this game from front to back, I didn't experience a single one. But for recording, I got a total of 4. 2 were odd pop-in issues of cutscenes not loading improperly, as you saw with the Ghost of Da Silva. 1, the world unloaded itself and I had to restart a checkpoint, and I had 1 CTD during a cutscene. All I know is that the eventual showtime reel for 3 is gonna be funny to make. While Max Payne 3 might be my least favorite of the trilogy, it is still a phenomenal game with phenomenal competition beating it out. Gameplay-wise, 3 isn't as free-flowing as 1 or 2, but what it makes up for is chaotic energy. You shamble and bumble around in gunfights, wear and tear having finally cut off to max. The inclusion of the cover system adds an extra layer of spray and praise befitting for the aged Payne, who can't get away with John wooing anymore. Speaking of, this is a nice send-off to the character of Max. We've gone from a bulletproof spirit of vengeance to an obsessed and short-sighted idiot back to a gruff depressive who still lingers on as an agent of brutal justice. He's been built up, torn down, then built back up again. He recaptures that fire, the need to right wrongs. And in finding this solace, Max has finally freed himself from the constraints of his past. He can move forward, no longer weighed down by regret or ghosts. It is honestly hard to think of a better video game trilogy that has been released. Like, most I can draw to is either the Sly trilogy if we aren't counting Thieves in Time, I don't for a plethora of reasons, as it isn't like Sucker Punch developed that one, Metroid Prime trilogy, or possibly The Witcher. Possibly. I say that because playing 1 and 2 are a hurdle you have to get accustomed to. Most of the time, there's always a bad egg out of the 3 that throws off the ranking. BioShock has Infinite, Dark Souls, and Xenosaga have their weak second entries, Mass Effect and Batman Arkham its third game, the modern Tomb Raider trilogy might as well not even be listed, boneless Uncharted lacking in fun and might as well be an excuse for Riona, and so forth and so on. Max Payne just doesn't see a quality dip like the others I've mentioned, and its continuous story doesn't fall apart in any regard. There are so many interwoven parts too for Max Payne, making it surprising that this didn't fall apart. James McAvoy puts in a stellar performance after Next. The presentation stylings, while different between the Remedy duology and 3, remain finely crafted and the gameplay fun. At worst, the weapon limit for 3 just means your armory isn't expansive and the weapons feel kinda samey. This isn't, say, BioShock Infinite, where certain weapons that played pivotal roles in your arsenal are now subject to case-sensitive scrutiny. Why, yes, I love facing handymen or motorized patriots without a big gun. Thank you, Infinite, for limiting my weapon choice and generally having a quite shit selection. I don't view that game highly if you can't tell. That series, not counting System Shock, peaked with BioShock 2. That's another one of my scalding hot takes if you're wondering, as while BioShock 1 might have an interesting story, that game does a lot wrong on the gameplay front. Anywho, this show is made possible with the likes of the moviegoers within the Peanut Gallery and Inner Circle. Consider buying a ticket at patreon.com/Let's Talk About Games, no apostrophe in the Let's, for behind the scenes access to LTA scripts, thumbnails, and other bonus material, your name in the credits, and early screenings of episodes, plus the Showtime reels. November saw me ramble on about the differences between Postal and Hatred as the dude shot through Paradise and Postal Redux, while December will be a host to a Monster Mash in the form of Destroy All Monsters Melee. Oh boy, Christmas and Godzilla, it's a miracle! And well, there isn't going to be a hint this time around, as this is the end of the season. 4 took us all over the place, beginning with a controversial point-and-click game and ending with a Shattered Man spiral and redemption. We visited the population of an undersea city, took 2 trips to a foggy northeastern town, learned about karate bugmen, and saved the world from a genocidal goddess. We were in the role of an amnesiac scientist, a trans woman, an unseen detective hired by a rock band, and even ourselves once or twice. We protected the city, painted it, robbed it, and then burned it down. We went where our stomach took us and had a few dealings with the supernatural, yet we came out of all of that no worse for wear. I guess I just want to say a big thank you to everyone that has made this season both possible and enjoyable. I never thought that I would have a following of this magnitude for the controlled chaos that is Let's Talk About, nor that I would have thought I would be paid for producing this show. This is all a passion project, and seeing the support that I get from members of the Inner Circle to those in the Peanut Gallery and all the ticket holders means much to me. I love being able to bang on with weird analogies or provide my unique insight to games both well known and not, and see people enjoy my often strange ramblings. I was able to cover my favorite video game of all time solely because of you guys, a whopping 6-hour project that puts feature-length film, links to shame. A whole summer was dedicated to my love and adoration for an H game that strove to be more. I don't know what 2023 will hold for me in the cast of characters this show has, apparently, but you can bet that it will be filled with more esoteric lore that doesn't matter in the long run, my usual trash bag editing style, and video games. Thank you, and good night.